much do you think the Circassian in Turkey have an influence on the Turkish government towards its strategy in the North Caucasus, or can we see something in the future like the way now the President of Turkey, Erdogan, he goes and he talk about the Libyans issue, the Egyptian issue, the Syrian issue, you know? Thank you.
Yeah, when you look at the last 8 years of his rule, you cannot find any word regarding Abkhazia, for example. They try to be active, the Turkish government and Turkish foreign policy try to be active in the Caucasus, but not for the Abkhazians or Circassians, but to keep Georgia in this line, to establish a new networks to reach Azerbaijan and some other regions. Of course, he's aware of the existence of Circassian diaspora and their activities, but one way or another they find some ways to manage the Circassian groups and to balance all those activities. But most probably they are fed up with those Georgian complaints at that moment, I may say, if I'm not mistaken. Therefore, they need to develop another version. But for the first time, in this Abkhazian case, the Americans, Europeans and Russians are agreed to see Turkey more active in this Caucasian issues. But I don't know, is it productive or not? For example, the most concrete offer of Turkey during the war in 2008 is to establish the Caucasian Stability and Cooperation Pact. But when they offered this initiative, 2 of those Caucasian countries were fighting with each other, Russia and Georgia. There was a war still between another 2, Azerbaijan and Armenia. 2 of these potential members have no open border, Turkey and Armenia. Then what kind of a cooperation and stability in the Caucasus? And there is no need to name all those ethnic groups, Abkhazians, Ossetians and Circassians. No one, or Chechens, no one cares, and no one wants to speak on those issues. This is more complicated. When we have a productive or assertive foreign policy of Turkey, when we speak about it, when the Turkish government start to speak on Chechen, Abkhaz, Ossetians and other groups, when they manage to bring all those groups onto the same table, then we can speak about assertive Turkish foreign policy. But at that moment, I don't see any sign of it. They just try to balance the issues, and they don't want to see any conflict again has started, because they are afraid of Nagorno-Karabakh. They are very afraid of all those Kurdish issues. They are all interlinked. Maybe in the US it's a bit different for the US government, but for Turkish government, all those issues are interlinked, and one step in any case means they have to take another step in the others. They don't want to face with all those realities. This is the case.
I think Russia and Turkey has a very like the policy, you don't touch my genocide, I don't touch your genocide. So they don't want to mention their genocide, we don't want to mention.
Yeah, especially for, yes. And you know, Turkey tried once during the first Chechen war. And in Turkish governments in the early 1990s were very active to deal with all those Abkhazian, Chechen and Circassian causes overtly and covertly. But at the end, Russians retaliated. They used PKK card. And then suddenly Turkey stopped to involve all those issues in the Caucasus, the North Caucasus, ethnic issues, to support the diaspora groups and other Circassian groups. Then they changed their track and tried to establish some links to ease or to moderate all those Circassian groups and organizations not to deal with all those issues directly and openly. And as I mentioned, to use genocide. Who dares? It's no way, it's impossible. But by chance, President Obama started to say something another for Armenian genocide. And then there's a venue if they accept the Armenian genocide with another name.
The massacre.
Massacre, or no, not massacre. Metzegen, it's the Armenian word. Most probably, like the Jews, they have another name for genocide. Yes, Holocaust. And then Metzegen for Armenians. And then we may start to use genocide for Circassians initially, and they may find some another way, I don't know, more understandable and acceptable.
I hope.
By Russians or Turks, by international community, but not Circassians or Abkhazians.
Dr. Mitat, I'm just wondering, since you are engaged heavily and used to be engaged heavily with the State Department in Turkey, is there any set policy by the Turkish government to protect or promote the cause of the Turkic-speaking people of the North Caucasus, as the Balkan or the Karachay?
Yeah.
If they speak the language, do you believe, or if there is any set policy, is a policy,
Yeah.
and is that policy protected by the national, Turkish National Security or
Yeah, I may say that not yet, but you know, for the Turkish government, the mentality is a little bit different. They thought that Circassians or Chechens and other groups are also Turks. Therefore, there is no difference between Karachay, Balkar, and Adige from the perspective of Turkish government. For example, when the guy, our guy, hijacking the plane in late 1980s, the Chechen guy, sorry, Shamil Basayev, took the plane and hijacked and landed in Ankara. It's a good story, and you can see on the newspapers, on Turkish news media, and there was a bargaining process between Russians and Turks. And at the end, they agreed, and the Russian says, we do not arrest when they come back. And then the Turkish government let Basayev and his team to go back to Krasnodar. And after that, all those media asking Turkish head of Turkish police forces, how do you leave all those guys? They are terrorists with their guns, and go back with the same plane together with all those passengers. Is it not dangerous? And the head says, no, it's okay. These guys are okay, and we have an agreement with Russians. And he tried to find some other way. Couple of times they keep asking the same question. At the end, he gets angry and says, "Come on, they are Turks, Chechen Turks. What are you expecting us to arrest those guys? No way, it's impossible because they are Turks." And therefore, for Turkish government, still there is no knowledge that Circassians, Chechens, or other groups are different. Adiges, or all those Circassians are part of Turkic nation and Turkish population. Maybe this is good for us at that moment, I don't know. But most probably within time, if they develop any policy towards the North Caucasus, the Turkified nations take the precedence. Of course, intelligence services are very aware of this fact. They know the difference between Karachay, Cherkess and other groups. But the way to tell the population to make propaganda on this issue is a little bit different. But they do not want to alienate or terrify Russians. It is very dangerous. Look at the trade volume. I just talked about it. It is 38 billion in 2008. It is around 30 billion last year. And they have plan or aim to make it 100 billion US dollars in coming decade, which is a huge amount of money. And Turkey is dependent on Russia on energy issues, especially after this is the signing of agreement at the nuclear station, which makes everything more complicated and as a sort of nightmare that makes a little bit different. Therefore, I don't expect Turkish foreign policy in line with the Circassian expectation. Most probably it develops in line with the Russians and some other more regional powers.
Yes, if I understand this now, the majority of the Circassian diaspora is in Turkey. And we have two problems. The first problem we had with the Russian, that the Russian, they tried to Russianize all the other nationalities. And the same problem we had in Turkey also, because Turkey also tried to Turkish all the nationalities.
Yeah.
So democracy came very, well, like 10 years now, 15 years in Turkey, and it's still growing. I think the diaspora in Turkey needs to work more with the Turkish government to solve this issue.
Yes.
You mentioned that we need to have strategy probably, or roadmap, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we cannot, if the Circassian diaspora in Turkey still cannot communicate with the Turkish government, okay, I think this is a very, very problem to the Circassian diaspora there.
Yeah.
So, since also the Circassian are the majority, like 5% of the Turkish population, if I understand this, they should have some kind of a big influence in the governments to try to find something to clear the Circassian issue diaspora.
Yes, exactly. You are right. Except last 2 years, the diaspora organizations in Turkey are cultural institutions, mainly. They act as if they are cultural bodies to get together. They have dance, and another thing. You have a good saying, and I have to and everything. But last 2 years, everything has started to change. Especially young generations are asking some political issues, and all those associations start to change their structure. And for example, I have a chance to speak with my friends. There are meetings with the participation of different groups, more Islamic, leftist, rightist, whatever it is, rural or urban groups of Circassians get together, and they have started to discuss the issues of the Circassians in Turkey and try to establish more political bodies, and they are just looking after Kurdish and some other ethnic groups that they establish network with the state. They are discussing the political rights or education or some other issues. And this is a new phenomenon. And most probably we will see more politicized, in quote, associations in Turkey. And then it is possible to discuss genocide issue or the Olympics or protesting, or to create pressure groups, political ones, to expect something. If not, it is impossible. We are getting together to protest, for example, Russia or Georgia on the spot. It depends on the developments or event, any event. But there is no political will, and there is no strategy, and there is no well-defined aim to reach out. What we are expecting from Turkish government, what we are fighting for, democracy. It is democracy, but we can play or do something related with politics with an umbrella of, for example, a mainstream Turkish political party, leftist, rightist, Republican, even nationalist one. You can see many Circassians in Turkey doing politics under the umbrella of nationalist party. It is interesting. Or you can see some groups doing politics in Islamic inclined political parties. They prefer act as if they are Muslims, not Circassians. Their priorities are different than being a Circassian. This is very important. But for the first time, these common sense meetings has just started. 2 of them were organized. One is in Abant and the other one is in Istanbul. And in those meetings, for the first time, different groups get together and discuss the mainstreams or the issues of the Circassians in Turkey. And this is the case. It takes time, but this is the case.
That's good starting.
Yeah, it's a good start. It's late, but it's not. Yeah, 3. Yeah,
I've been attending lots of speakers, gatherings and so on. And you are the first one who started and used the operative war strategy, especially for the future. We always sit down, as you said, hafla, and we dance, drink, and we go home. Nobody talks about tomorrow. We always talk about what happened to us yesterday. Now, looking at what is there at the platform of politics in Turkey, and since the majority of the diaspora people live there, what are the chances of creating an underground force which will bring our issue to the table of politicians that will force them, like the PKK, to talk about it and do something about it? Because if you do not yourself create the occasion, especially now Turkey is, as you said, a soft heart for democracy and revolutionary things, don't you think it's the best time to create something to be recognized by Turkey, to be operating in Russia, in the borders, to recognize us as people of diaspora?
I don't think that there is a potential. Of course, there's a potential to establish such a kind of underground organization. It's possible if you can find some leadership cadre, but it is not productive at that moment. Because, you know, still Turkish government is so strong, and the experience with the Kurds, especially the PKK, because PKK is not the Kurds, all the Kurds in Turkey. It says that the Kurdish population is in Turkey is over 20 million. Just in Turkey, leave Syria, Iraq, and other Kurdish Iraq population aside. Just in Turkey, it said that 20 million Kurds are living. But when you look at the votes, the Kurdish party, the VTP, PKK inclined political party, they get 5%, which means only the 20 or 25% of all Kurds in Turkey vote for this political party, and they don't want to see any link with PKK, the Kurdish population. And for the Circassians, at that moment, you may find some tiny number of people or youngsters to take part in any kind of such kind of activity, but it's unproductive in Turkey, because Circassians are part of Turkey as a diaspora or Turkish citizen, but the aim is something different. I read an article in a newspaper, the Circassian one. It says it is impossible to ask for Circassians an autonomy in Turkey because we are distributed in different parts of Turkey. This is also interesting, even to discuss, even to think about, to ask for any autonomy for the Circassians is a new phenomenon.
But that is the thing, that's a healthy thing, because the want is there, but the means are lacking.
Yeah.
You are amongst people, you are a guest there. They have done nothing to you except they have accepted you. And they have used you for their purposes.
Yeah.
Turkey, rather than doing it, you know, using it for your purpose, for your aims.
Yeah.
Turkey is not going to come up and give us our projected goals and ambitions. It's going to use us there as a means of a pressure or something if anything happens with Russia. That's all, and we have been doing this for 100 and 200 years.
Yeah, but...
we are not going to repeat the same mistake.
Yeah, yeah.
What we have to do is to go back directly to the point and put ourselves on the map and on the table.
Yeah.
And the majority of Circassians are living in Turkey.
But this is not fair to ask Turkey to solve the Circassian issue. Because it is
I'm not asking Turkey to solve the Circassian issue.
But this underground...
But only if they are up to the freedom, democracy and so on, give them the right to go back to their country.
I need to think about it. This is the first time I heard such a kind of question. It's a bit tough.
Just looking at it at a radicalism.
Yes, yeah. But you know, the Circassians and diaspora, they are not radicals in Turkey.
No. Nowhere.
And this is the case.
Nowhere.
And they are so loyal to Turkish government, and they are part of the government. This is the reason they do not want to discuss the genocide even as a term. They do not want to discuss and to put in an agenda because of this reason. Because genocide is a very dangerous wording in Turkey, and it assaults Turks, and therefore they don't want to use this.
What is happening to us as Circassians?
Yeah.
After diaspora, when we came out, we came to countries where they wanted us.
Yes.
And they gave us leadership. And we are happy that we are solving their problems. We never thought of our problems.
Yes, exactly. You're right.
So this is the
I
time
agree.
we have to think our problem.
Yes. I agree. Totally agree.
They used us, they used us.
Yes.
It's the first time the general actually, I'm hearing him saying stuff like that. So probably give him a...
Well, here's the general, so.
The word, strategy is the word we have to start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's answer over there.
Doctor, I have two questions. First one, I think I heard you say that we cannot count on the diaspora in Turkey to take leadership. And I'm thinking to myself, that really means it's us. We're the ones now who have to be the leaders for all of our people. Because here in the United States, I think we're the only ones who have the freedom to act right now to do this. So there's very few of us here, and it's a big responsibility, but I think it is ours. If anybody says anything different, I'll be very happy because I'm scared of all this work. But I think we have a lot of work.
But I don't want to be unfair to Turkish diaspora. They are active. They are doing lots of job, and they are trying to find the best way. And all those organizations are the most developed among the other diaspora organizations. And what makes the Turkish diaspora so strong is they have a potential to establish some links with the Europeans and to use Turkish government as a leverage against Russia and against other regional actors. But the point is that the diaspora in Turkey is not organized well, and they have some limitations. The limitations are the limitations of Turkish society in Turkey, but it is changing very quickly. What is the biggest difference between the US diaspora and the Turkish diaspora is you are living in a more liberal and more well-defined structure, and you are far from, if you ask this same question, a diaspora leader in Turkey, for example, he says, you are living far from the Caucasus. We are living so close, and we are part of the Caucasus. And Turkey is a strong state again, and it is not easy to establish civil society initiative in Turkey. It's a new phenomenon in Turkey. Therefore, we need time. And the young generations also so active. You can count on the diaspora, in fact, because the main bulk of the diaspora is living there, and there's a potential, and they are so close to the Caucasus. But the wording or the strategy is a little bit different, and you have to give such time. Or
is it the Atatürk doctrine which you are not trying to get out of it? Turkish only and nothing else.
It's not the case, but you know, yes, there was a pressure, but now the diaspora is changing its structure, and it takes time. It takes some time, especially young generations. They are trying to learn their history, for example. They are not aware of this fact. You can read, for example, some English books written by foreign academics, but the main bulk of Turkish diaspora cannot read and speak in English, and there are limited number of books in Turkish, objective, in history and everything. Therefore, it takes time, but the new generations, the diaspora in Turkey, can speak some other languages. And this has started a new wave among the diaspora. This is the main difference between the old guards and the young generations. You can count on it, but it takes time to use to use the same word. We need a center. I don't know, is it strategic center or academic center or diaspora organization settled by some people that have a vision towards the Caucasus and to attract the generations or the people or the Circassians from different parts of the world, and to channelize all those activities to reach an aim. But at that moment, I don't think that the Turkish diaspora have a potential or vision to define such a kind of, how can I say, movement that you are expecting from the diaspora, because our agendas and our expectations are much more different than each other. This is the point.
As always, we are the Circassian. We like our young people to be more interfere with our culture.
That's good.
And I'm seeing this young kid. He's been
That's
raising
good.
his hand, and he wants to have a question.
Can you give us insight with Turkey's now agreements and good relationships with Russia? Is this going to be an obstacle in the long term when Circassians start asking for their rights?
It's a good question. From my perspective, yes, it could be an obstacle at that moment, because Turkey and Russia, for the first time, established good neighborly relations since the Cold War, the Second World War. Before the First World War, after the First World War, both of those countries, Soviet Union and Turkish Republic, needs their partnership. They support each other, and they act as if they are partners against all those allies and Europeans. But after the Cold War, everything has changed a lot. But the collapse of the Soviet Union brought some new perspectives in 1999, 97 and 99, and Turkey and Russia decided to change their track. And they signed an agreement in 2001 and decided to act as a partners in Eurasia. It is very interesting. And the Eurasia means the Caucasus first, and the Central Asia. And Central Asia is not important that important for us, but the Caucasus is important for us because they decided to shape the Caucasus together. And now, during the last visit, Putin says we have no different agenda in the Caucasus with Turkey. We are thinking, acting as if the one policy that we have. It is very important and it's very interesting. Therefore, there is no difference at that moment between Turkey's and Russia's policies in the Caucasus in general, including the Georgia itself. It is very interesting. Russia is very supportive of the idea of Abkhazian independence, Turkey against it, but they say we are in the same line when the Caucasus has concern. And Turkey most probably do not touch upon any issue related with the Circassians in the North Caucasus without having Russian consent on it at that moment. Because they say it is Russia's internal politics. We do not interfere any domestic policy of Russia. And how can you force Turkey then to produce any kind of new policy towards the Circassians? No way, it is impossible. If they agreed to develop a policy together, then there will be a policy of Turkey towards the North Caucasus. But it is not a political one.
How about if we cause a problem to Turkey?
Sorry?
If you cause a problem, as I think, at the Turkey government, that we need our right, you know?
Yes.
So what's their reaction to the Turkish government?
Most probably they will say, we are just giving some rights. Our citizens, Circassian descent, Turkish citizen, you may have your rights to speak in Circassian, to open up some courses for language education, but it is impossible to establish a school because of this Kurdish issue. And most probably Turkish and Russian governments thinks and acts in the same way because of the same problems, because Turkey has some Kurdish problem. It is almost the same for Russians, because they just give the same example. In any meeting with Turks, they said, you have Kurdish issue and PKK, and we have Chechens and some other separatists. Do not play with those guys. And then, there's no way. But most probably, they learned much, the Turkish policymakers. They don't touch upon any democratization issue. They say, we are trying to democratize our country. We give some civil rights and all the rights to our citizens, but that's all. They don't interfere any issue in the North Caucasus, in Circassian lands. They don't want to take part.
our problem different than the Turkish problem. Kurdish problem. We are immigrant, so we have a land, we have a homeland, we need to go back, whatever it is. But Kurdish problem is like very different than.
Yes, exactly. And this is the main mistake of Turkish government. I wrote some reports to those people. Do not compare the Kurdish issue with this Chechen issue. Because look at the history. All those administrative system, the Soviet nationalities and Turkish national policies, they are different than each other. But you know, the practical end result is different. They don't care. We don't want to face with any problem related with ethnic groups. Circassians are ethnic groups. We have some diaspora and Circassian population. They are Turkish citizens. We may deal with those groups with a limited manner, but we don't care those Circassians in the North Caucasus. This is Russian affair. But if the international community act in some manner against Russia, they may support it. But for those independence or establishing a new state, most probably you cannot see Turkey there. It is impossible. For the first time, there's a unique example for Turkey's shift in Turkish policy is the Kosovo example. For example, I do not expect, as an expert on international relations, for Turkey to recognize Kosovo's independence, because it is against the mainstream politics of Turkish foreign policy. But you know, in this case, again, Turkishness to play a card in the Balkans, the imperial history, all those Ottomanism comes in front of us. But when the Circassian land has concern, the rival is Russia, and they don't want to face with Russia at that moment.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For Circassians outside Turkey, the picture on where the majority of Pettiga stand is unclear. And May 21st, there will be two major rallies, one in Beşiktaş and one in Taksim Square. Now, if you can just talk a little bit about what the two differences are in the values of these two parties that we might see from the outside, and whether using May 21st is just a rally point and is it trying to be a political move in terms of just lobbying publicly in Turkey, or is it just to keep a tradition or the legend of the actual genocide and to keep the majority of Circassians in Turkey through some of the organizations there just practically silent on the real issues of Circassians?
Yeah, the difference is that the diaspora in Turkey split it different branches, and the main denominator is their political stance in Turkey. For example, whether they are supportive of religious stance, because more Muslim or more religious Circassians, they have their own organization. Liberals have their own. Abkhazians their own. Some Adiga groups and Ossetians, they have their own. And all those organizations have a tradition that not to work together. This is the case, and this is the nightmare of the Circassians or diaspora in Turkey. And then at the end, they have Abkhazian Federation, which means another split, and they don't attend their organizations' meetings, and instead, they just ruin the organization or the activity, ask all those members not to participate in any activity. And then it is impossible to create a vision or strategy for those groups, and then you cannot count on Turkey's diaspora because of this basic reason. And this is the case. They have all of those organizations have their own activities, and they have own alternatives to each other. And at the end, you see the pictures of 20 or 25 people in each and every occasion. And are those activities are political? Yes, they are political, but non-productive. It attracts no one. And it shows that the diaspora in Turkey is a legend. And the Turkish government started to analyze the issue, and everyone, including Russians, try to control all those bodies, and they support different groups. It is easier because to control smaller, splitted diaspora groups and to play with those groups in different ways, and at the end there is no potential. And this is the reason. And it's a tradition, of course, because they have to memorize the deportation, not genocide, and they have to get together. And there are some traditions, but it's a little bit...
Because in 2007, 2008, 2009, we began what we called the viral campaign, which was videos and a lot of things about the protests and the campaign. And we saw one group now in Turkey do that, and they used the 1864 backdrop in their video. And that's also led by Cihan Cendemir. And we see other big stars like Muhyiddin Kandur, also all these guys that are campaigning with them in this. But we don't know from the outside how, you know, what the real core of these, you know, rallies are. So for people who try to read up on it and ask people like you, we can get a shot. But Circassians in the homeland and elsewhere really have no clue of what's going on. They see one big May 21st activity in Turkey all over.
Yeah, the diaspora groups or the organizations have their own agenda. For example, as an outsider, because I try to be an outsider to those associations, try to keep my identity as an academic and to establish or to keep my links with all those groups in different activities and different places, but try to push all those groups to work together in coming future. But this is the reality of being a diaspora. The Turkish diaspora is not diaspora. It is still a muhajir group. They feel themselves exiles still. They are the immigrants now. But currently, last couple of years, they have started to change their identity and start to use the word diaspora. It is a new concept for the diaspora. They prefer to use immigrant up until 2001, 2002. Now they have started to use diaspora. What they don't know the meaning of diaspora. This is the case. And young groups and young generations started to read on this, being the meaning of being a diaspora and being a diaspora organization. And then the discussion of the politicization has started. And they don't have any agenda, for example, except the Abkhazia. What's going on in Karachay-Cherkess, Kabardin-Balkar? Of course, they are just following up all those developments and they have an idea. But you cannot find any political declaration regarding the Circassian cause, what's happening in Adigea, what do we want to see in the future. No way. Because they are fighting with each other at that moment. And they are trying to define themselves, first of all. And we need some time to count and to see more crystallized associations and organizations or federations within diaspora. But it takes time.
Okay, I understand the differences within the organizations in Turkey and people with their political backing, whether they're Islamist or leftist or liberal or conservative, whatever you want to call it. But to me, and I think others in this room, the one simple message that we could all relate on is no Sochi Olympics on the land of genocide or deportation or exile or exodus or whatever you want to call it. That's a human issue. It's not like a political issue. It's not a anything more than that. Can you please explain to me what is the reluctance to accept this philosophy, no Sochi Olympics? And is there some kind of influence that is preventing people from wholeheartedly accepting this kind of philosophy and moving forward until we could have a crystallized strategy to pursue other things within our nation?
Because the Olympics is the issue of high politics. They thought that they don't have any capacity to stop the Olympics. And when you ask the same question to top guys in Turkey on different groups or federation, they may say that we don't have such a kind of power, and this is useless. And we have to think first Turkey's interest, and we have to think about our friends or brothers in the North Caucasus, Circassia. They may affect negatively on this issue, and they rationalize it. Because they don't want to stand against the Turkish government, they don't want to act as if an independent actor and they have their own agendas, because they don't have any tradition or mentality. They have to take care of Turkey first, and then North Caucasians or Circassians in the North Caucasus or Adiga Republic and other regions, and then they act as if they are a political body. And this is the reason they see the issue as a political issue. And they thought that we have to organize ourselves first, we have to solve our main issues. What are the main issues? They have no idea. But this is high politics.
But this is a unifying message for all these groups. Yeah. So why isn't it, because as I said, it's a human issue. It's not so much of a political.
You know, it's not easy to define the structures, but you know, there are deep relations already established. State, they have links, the business circles, Russian government doing business in Turkey and Russia, some officials. Look at the administrators or the members of the ruling bodies of all those associations or federations. Most of them were part of government. They were officers, or they are officers. They have some big business with state. These are the main impediments. They have to think first their yes, and this is the issue. It needs more independent organizations and then some people not related with the state and the business circles, because their interests are different than the interests of our society, and especially their personal interests are taking precedence.
Then how do you see, like, let's say, organizations like CAFED or like more those organizations that have more of a Russian, pro-Russian leaning? How do you see those organizations influencing this type of thinking, or something that could be something more?
For example, for those Circassian associations, it is a sort of assault to say that you are pro-Russian in Turkey. And they thought that it is impossible for us to be or labeled as a pro-Russian. But this is the case, because why I am just putting Abkhazia on the center of my argument is that because Abkhazia makes all those organizations in Turkey a sort of pro-Russian organizations, because Abkhazian independence is the most important thing for all those associations in Turkey. And when they accept that we have to work for Abkhazia, and then the atmosphere and the political jargon has changed very quickly in Turkey. For example, it was impossible to see any Russian in any event of Circassians in Turkey. But after 2008, it is very common to see some Russians, and they speak Russian in all those events. For example, in 2005 or in 2004, it was impossible. You cannot dream of it. But now it has changed the atmosphere, and then we need some time to normalize, because they have to calculate the balance, whether we can act as if Circassians or Adigas or Abkhazians. Being an Adiga is against the Abkhazian independence, or any act can have negative effects on Abkhazian independence, and then they prefer to stay calm and silent, and then all those issues became high politics, and they do not want to touch upon it. And someone can discuss and put, for example, Adigas in the US. They can say it, but they don't want to say it at that moment. Of course, you can find some names. take the example of all those activities organized by Georgians, for example, last 2 years. You also actively take part. In the first occasion, they failed to find anyone from Turkey to take part, even to listen all those discussions. No way. And I know Glenn Howard and some Circassian friends traveled all over Turkey and met with all those associations, including CAFED, and all those organizations refused to take part in all those activities. Because Abkhazia is at the center, and they care Abkhazia so much, and then there is no need to discuss this Circassian genocide, because Russians may change their attitude towards Abkhazia, and we lost our cause and independence. They cannot balance, or they cannot calculate the high politics in the region, and this is the reason. And then they put all those discussions aside. Of course, all of them. Personally, when you ask each and every person, they said, yes, it's a genocide. But they don't want to say as an official policy of any organization. It is something different. This is high politics in their mind. And the state bodies also not want to see any kind of an activity. And this is the reason.
We are talking about politics, geography, people, and so on. Traditionally, we were against Russia as communists.
Yes.
And we as Muslims and the others are Christians and freedom and democracy and so on. That was the war then. And if I intended to go into a meeting and there are few communists either in Turkey or in Jordan, I was taken to the interrogation, and the next day either I came back with broken fingers or I don't know what. It was like that. And we fought the Russians all the time, Turks or anybody else, that they are communists. Now things have changed, and they became nationalists. And we know that they are all rednecks, and they are all against anybody who is not Russian. Yes. And we see this all in their streets and in their advertisement and so on. And Putin is the head of this. We as Turks or we as Circassians, cannot we fight them nationalistically? And we form a nationalistic group all over the world, and Russia is Turkey is one supporter of this.
Yes, but you know, I think all those Turkish politicians or decision makers are aware of the fact that Turkey and Russia are the rivals. At the end, it is impossible to establish a cooperation in Eurasia, because Russia wants all these Caucasus and Central Asia, all former Soviet regions, keep as it was. It's under control.
They are just postponing the inevitable.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So why don't we just stir the pot?
I don't know.
I got to make a comment. This is not a question. You see, we have a problem as Circassian everywhere. Now, in case anything happens, like this organization. Last year they sent us Sufyan to tell us the Russian allowed us to make our own Adiga Olympics. Now, as us, we're going to say, wow, they're going to flatter us. They're going to say, what are we asking for? They're going to make our own Adiga thing.
Yeah.
And that night when he came and spoke, I told him, I said, if it wasn't for this organization, would they send you? He laughed. So, we been attacked by propaganda, not from the Russians. Russia never, we've been working on this kind of organization for the last 40 years in this country. Russia never said anything.
Yeah.
Our problem is our people in Caucasus, who have the media. They attack the people who work for anything asking for independence.
Yes, exactly.
And they have agents. It's not official agents, but they are more of
friends.
Helpers to tell them, these people are asking for something. We're having a great time in this country.
Yeah.
Why don't they come back? We have no problem. If you go back, they will never let you live in peace. So from inside to outside, it's everybody, most of the people, it's against organization like this.
Yeah.
So before you said Russia never commented on that. Russia don't comment. They have agents to comment on these things. They write it in the newspaper and they say, wow, they get people outside. They're going to attack Russia. They're going to destroy Russia. What are you going to destroy with?
No, you are CIA and FBI agents and everything. This is the case. Yes, you are right. And in fact, this is the reason that I am just saying we need to develop a sort of strategy. Because the Circassians in Circassia, Circassians in Turkey, or in Jordan, in the US, in Europe, have different agendas. And we are expecting and discussing different topics, and we are just blaming each other by following different agendas. And this is the case because we have no idea. For example, democratization in Turkey is good for diaspora, Turkish diaspora. Yes, exactly, that's true. But does it the end? What are we fighting for? And there is no answer at all. Even the political bodies of all those representations or federations have no idea. They say, some people in those organizations, for example, I do remember a couple of months ago, the head of the Ankara organization called me, and that night all those young groups want to discuss some issues. Please take part and just follow up and give some ideas to us. I said, okay. We have participated 3 academics there, and all those 7 or 9, less than 10 young Circassian university educating people. They said we want to be more active, and we have to define a role for us, and we have to define a kind of strategy to attract other Circassians in our universities and in our cities to join us. And then we may create some atmosphere, and we may ask Turkish government some rights, basic rights, like Kurds and some other groups. A friend of mine, a Circassian, very well known, an old guard, and he says, no way, forget about it. Even do not say any cooperation with the Kurds in Turkey. It is a nightmare for us. Do not ask any right. You have to develop your own agenda. Just go to the university and finish your work. And then I said, why are you here? Go home, and there's no need to discuss the issue. Of course, we have to find some ways. I don't know exactly, but we have to work together to create such an agenda, and we have to develop all together. And if not, it is impossible. We may get together, the diaspora in the US, in Europe, in Turkey, and define a sort of independent Circassia, but Circassians in the Circassia have no such a kind of an idea, an agenda, and then we may ask some territory in the Atlantic, for example, to establish a new Circassian government. It's an idea, it's a good idea. If we can find any territory in those regions, we can establish an independent Circassian country, I don't know.
Well, right now, our hope are young people.
Yes, that's the case, exactly.
They're going to do something, and maybe we won't see it, but I hope they keep working at it.
Yeah, this is a big fight.
They already really accomplished a lot.
Yes, it's possible.
The biggest accomplished I consider when Jebuha Sufyan came here, and he's doing his propaganda about the Olympics. There is no way a Russian will give you that chance unless they are.
But you know, I am still optimistic. For example, in late 1980s, no one just think about the collapse of the Soviet Union, independent Kazakhstan or Georgia or whatever it is. But it collapsed down, and then independent countries. And after 10 years' time, they ask for NATO membership, European Union membership, and they ask any kind of right. I discussed with our American friends in 2005 or 6. I said, please be open. You have to discuss with the Abhazian groups and get together to understand those people. He said, no way, it's impossible. We are supporting the Georgians. I said, yes, go ahead. support Georgian independence and Georgian territorial integrity. But you had to work together with Abkhazians. And I'm going to tell a story to you. And he said, yes, okay then. Think about an Abkhazia, independent one. And some countries, including the Europeans and the US, recognized the independence of Abkhazia. And then once upon a day, they just asked for NATO membership and EU membership. He laughed at me and I said, think about 10 years ago, it was an issue of laughter for Georgia or Ukraine and some other countries. Be frank, and this is the case. This is politics. We may see independent Circassia within 10 years. Who knows? Because it depends. It depends all those developments. But the question is that what we are expecting as a Circassian diaspora or the Circassian in Circassia in the near future. Independent Circassian land or Circassian state is an utmost interest. It's beyond the curtains, but it doesn't mean that we can stand aside and to expect to see the Independence Day. We have to work on it, and this is the case. I do remember I read lots of articles in 1930s, 1920s. All those immigrants in Europe tried to establish Circassian identity and to get ready when the independence come, they can establish their own state very easily. And therefore we have to work on our alphabet, our nationhood, our history, our language and everything. Lots of articles, you can find all those articles, but we almost forget all those activities last couple of decades, especially after the Cold War, after the Second World War. And now we are just started to reinvent all those old days and to try to define for a new roadmap or main pillars of statehood at whatever it is. I don't know. We will see.
It's needless to say, with everything comes out the assimilation, because we've been assimilated so much, so that big way. So we don't know how the thing is Adige. We don't know how to act Adige. We don't know how to get together as Adige to do something. Where we go, every place we went for the Turks, we went for the Arabs, we went for the Jews. We just went for them. We work for them. Right now, we in the United States. We work for the U.S., we go for work for them, but nothing for us, for our own. Because we've been assimilated and damaged so much, we cannot think it that way.
Yes, exactly. This is the danger on us, but you know, we are together. And if we feel ourselves as Adige or Circassian, still strong. Yes, it's working and fight for it. Yes, these are the facts. We are, especially some people like yourself, under the threat of assimilation twice or third and in the fourth level. It's more complicated. Exactly, you are right. But we have to define our interests. We have to think about the modern way. What are our interests? What are we seeking for?
When we go to Adige Caucasus, we see when you go to Turkey, you see the Adige fight for Turkey. You see his pictures as on a Turkish thing. You go to Arabs, the same thing. Here, the same thing. He has American flag over here. But you don't see any like Adige fighting for in Adige. You don't see any history from the Adige. We don't know our history. We only know we genocide in 1864. We fought for Russians 300 years. But who fought for Russians? Who was their leader? We don't know anything about it.
And the answer is in us. We have to find answers.
The answer is like what the Israelis do, the Jews.
It's a good example.
We have to form militia, underground.
Please.
Kill them.
Good night, everyone. My name is Berin. I'm from Turkey. I'm a Lava from Adapazarı. You said, the Erdogan and Abdullah Gül, when they are Turkish officials, when they are thinking about the Circassian issue, they are just related to issue with the Kurdish issue. But Abdullah Gül and Erdogan, they don't have any fear about Kurdish issue. They support Kurdish a lot. For example, last year, Abdullah Gül, they invited all Kurdish the intellectuals to the, like his home. And most of them, they are asking, independent state of Kurdish Republic. And he stayed with them, no problem. Erdogan is doing the same thing. And when they are talking about the Circassian issue, Erdogan last week, he told on the TV program, he said, oh, well, if we give the Circassian rights, and they're going to, ask the other, the ethnic groups asking their rights. Why they have, double face when they are, coming, the point is coming to Circassian is they're acting differently. Because Abdullah Gül and Erdogan, they have a little problem with the, centralized Turkish Republic. So they don't have any fear. They are working for that to, collapse that, the six major, stand for Turkish Republic. So I really, I don't believe that they have the Kurdish fear, the Kurdish problem. And what is the, real, fear against the Circassian, Abdullah Gül and Erdogan, especially?
Yeah, the Kurdish issue is, also it's a bit tense issue, but I think yes, it's a serious issue for those guys also. To get together with some representatives of Kurdish groups is something different than to give some rights or to accept the Kurdish rights. And during the election processes, and Tayyip Erdogan says we don't have any Kurdish problem issue. They are mainstream politicians in Turkey. When you take the mood and the lead, 8 years they are ruling the country, and you see, do you see any change in the attitude towards the Kurds? They are tough again, and they are tough against all those ethnic groups and beyond the political issues or the EU thing. But for the Circassians, the Kurds are the Kurds of native people of this Turkish territory. But Circassians, if they ask any right for those guys, you are the foreigners. You come to Turkey, to those lands, because of your identity and because of Ottoman tolerance. Sympathy, or I may say. These are different cases for those guys, and more important than, they are not aware of the real issue. What does the being deport people, being a Circassian, in fact they don't care so much. Maybe this is the reason. And they are mainstream politicians, they are aware of all those deep state issues, intelligence and everything, and most probably they are under strict control. They change their mind. It's not easy. After 8 years, they are different than early 2000, and most probably this is the reason. But it's more complicated. I don't know.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
That was very enlightening.
Thank you very much for your interest.